The Camp of the Mind, When Guilt Becomes the Ghost. This story first appeared in 1961, deep inside the Twilight Zone. Rod Serling called it Death's Head Revisited. It begins with a former SS officer returning to the ruins of Dachau, 17 years after the war, thinking he's only visiting a place from his past. But what he finds is not history, it's memory. And not memory of a world, but memory of the mind that made that world. Because in the zone, nothing outside can truly haunt you, only what has not been forgiven within. And that is where this reflection begins. A man returns to a place he believes he left behind, but the ruins are only the outer crust of an unhealed mind. He calls it Dachau, but it could be any mind still worshipping guilt. Because a place like Dachau does not exist in Bavaria. By its very nature, it must exist in the populated areas of the mind. The former SS officer Lutze believes he is visiting the past. In truth, he is revisiting the psychic structure that made the past seem real. Every stone, every scream, every shadow is a projection of memory. He walks into his own judgment and calls it nostalgia. The innkeeper recognizes him immediately, not as a man but as a thought pattern, arrogance in a uniform. This is why the Holy Spirit whispers through the narration, "The world is not haunted by the dead, but by the living belief in guilt. The ghosts are not spirits. They are unforgiven thoughts that have refused to die." Becker appears, not as a ghost, but as the memory of innocence denied. He represents the part of the mind that remembers what was done, not to condemn, but to reveal the sickness of separation. When he tells Lutze, "You never were a soldier. The uniform you wore cannot be stripped off," he is describing the permanence of belief. The ego cannot remove what it has woven into identity. The uniform is not fabric, it is thought. The trial that follows is not divine punishment. It is self-judgment masquerading as justice. The dead rise not to avenge themselves, but because the mind that believes in guilt must also believe in pain. The court is composed entirely of unhealed projections. Each figure, each accusation, each scream, all born of the same thought, "I have sinned and I deserve to suffer." Then comes the turning line. "Where are they?" he asks. "Where is the judge, the jury, the executioner?" And the answer comes like thunder. "They are in your mind." This is the revelation of the dream. The persecutors and the persecuted are one. The mind is both inmate and warden. The same thought that built the gallows now trembles beneath it. The crazy quilt of imagination, as Serling calls it, is the ego's tapestry of vengeance, sewn together with threads of wishful thinking. Guilt invents its own justice and calls it balance, but the scales are illusions made of smoke. When Becker declares, "This is not hatred, this is justice," he speaks from the level of the ego's correction, not God's. True justice would reveal that there was never anything to punish. But Lutze cannot yet bear that mercy. He still clings to the idea that guilt must be paid for. So his sentence is not death, it is insanity. Insanity is the ego's punishment for believing in guilt. It is the endless self-attack that comes from refusing forgiveness. When Becker says, "Your final judgment will come from God," the deeper truth shimmers beneath it. God does not judge because God never condemned. Lutze collapses, screaming from a punishment that has no source but his own belief in it. There isn't a mark on him because the body cannot bear witness to what is only of the mind. Rod Serling closes the story by saying that the camps must remain standing, as monuments to a time when men turned the earth into a graveyard. But metaphysically, the true monument is the body itself, the ego's shrine to guilt. It stands as proof that sin had consequences, that death is real, that love was destroyed. The course would call it the idol of separation, the graven image of fear. The mind keeps its Dachaus standing through memory and mourning. But the Holy Spirit's purpose for remembrance is different. Not to keep guilt alive, but to forgive the belief that any of it ever truly happened. The only way the mind stops being the gravedigger is to lay down the shovel, the desire to condemn. The truth is simple. Lutze was not condemned by God. He was condemned by the idea that guilt is real and must be paid for. And in that belief, he built his own hell. The real Dachau is not on a map. It exists wherever the mind believes punishment will restore innocence. Forgiveness alone can level those walls, because guilt is the ghost and forgiveness is the light that ends its haunting. Any place built to prove separation is a camp of the mind, and every mind that forgets its innocence becomes the gravedigger of its own peace. But the moment remembrance of love returns, the graves open and the sleepers rise, not to judge, but to awaken.